Intimidation has always been the favorite currency of the Kremlin, but deep within the dense, foreboding forests of Belarus, a new and far more sinister transaction is taking place that threatens to bankrupt the security of the entire European continent. While the world's attention has been fixed on the grinding attrition of the front lines in the Donbas, Ukrainian military intelligence has uncovered a shadowy construction project that suggests Vladimir Putin is preparing to open a terrifying new front in his psychological war against NATO. The head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Ola Ibashenko, has broken the silence, revealing incontrovertible evidence that Russia is actively building specialized military facilities designed to host the dreaded Hypersonic medium-range ballistic missile system on Belarusian soil. This is not merely a training exercise or a temporary deployment. It is the systematic preparation of a proxy state to host weapons capable of nuclear annihilation. The intelligence reports describe a hive of activity involving the construction of hardened launcher sites, advanced surveillance grids, and secure communication nodes that are the hallmarks of a permanent strategic missile base. Moscow is betting that this escalation will shatter European resolve, using the specter of a hypersonic strike to force concessions in peace negotiations that have otherwise stalled. Yet, as the concrete pours and defenses rise, one must wonder, is this merely an elaborate bluff to scare the West, or is the infrastructure being laid for a strike that could ignite a global conflict? Beyond the political posturing lies a technological nightmare that has Western military planners working through the night, as the Hypersonic missile system represents a quantum leap in offensive capability that could render traditional air defenses dangerously obsolete. Reports indicate that these missiles are capable of achieving hypersonic speeds exceeding Mach 10, tearing through the atmosphere with a velocity that gives interception systems mere seconds to react before impact. The deployment of such a weapon into Belarus effectively bypasses the buffer zone that NATO has relied upon, bringing major European capitals like Berlin, Warsaw, and even London within a terrifyingly short flight time of fewer than 20 minutes. The infrastructure currently being erected in Belarus, though described by some intelligence sources as being in the mock-up or preliminary phase, is designed to support a weapon that carries a separating warhead, potentially capable of delivering multiple nuclear payloads to different targets simultaneously. Putin is not just moving pieces on a chessboard. He is fundamentally altering the geometry of deterrence in Europe by turning a neighbor into a loaded gun pointed directly at the heart of the EU. The chilling reality is that while the missiles may not be fully operational today, the intent behind their placement is undeniable and irreversible. With the technical capability to strike anywhere in Europe not being entrenched in Belarus, the burning question remains: once the Hypersonic systems are fully online, what specific city has the Kremlin already designated as target number one? Alexander Lukashenko stands before the cameras with the bluster of a man in control, proudly proclaiming that these new missiles will allow him to slap down any neighboring nation that dares to threaten his regime. Yet his bravado masks the pathetic reality of a dictator who has become a prisoner in his own palace. The Belarusian leader has been vocal about his desire for these weapons, framing their arrival as a guarantee of his country's sovereignty and a shield for Russian speakers whom he bizarrely claims are being oppressed abroad. However, Ukrainian intelligence paints a picture of a man who is deluding himself, revealing that despite the missiles being stationed on his territory, Minsk will have absolutely zero operational control over them. The launch codes, the targeting data, and the maintenance schedules are all strictly held within the unified command system of the Russian strategic missile forces. Lukashenko has essentially agreed to turn his country into a massive Russian military base, treating the safety of his population for the illusion of power. He speaks of decision-making and partnership, but in the eyes of the Kremlin, he is nothing more than a logistics manager for the Russian army. This subservience was further highlighted when intelligence leaked that he would have no right to use the weapons, even if he wanted to. As he continues to play the role of the strongman for his domestic audience, observers are left asking, does Lukashenko realize he has handed Putin the weapon that could ultimately be used to hold him hostage? The arrival of the Hypersonic missiles is merely the final, kinetic phase of a quiet conquest that has seen the sovereignty of Belarus dissolve into the Russian Federation in all but name, a process that is as methodical as it is ruthless. Analysts have long warned of the Union State project, but recent months have seen an acceleration that suggests the full annexation of Belarus is nearing completion. From the integration of tax systems that give Moscow unprecedented access, to the Belarusian economy, to the establishment of joint customs groups that dictate trade policy, the walls closing in on Minsk are bureaucratic, as well as military. By stationing strategic assets like the Hypersonic system deep inside the country, Putin has ensured that Belarus is now inextricably linked to Russia's fate. Any retaliatory strike against these launchers would devastate Belarusian soil, effectively using the Belarusian people as human shields for Russian aggression. This is a masterclass in hybrid warfare where a nation is captured not by tanks rolling across the border, but by the slow strangulation of its independence through treaties, debts, and military integration. Lukashenko has sold his country piece by piece to stay in power, but with the Russian military now firmly entrenched in his backyard and controlling the most powerful weapons in the land, the dynamic has shifted. Now that Belarus has been fully digested by the Russian security apparatus, is there any path left for the country to escape total absorption, or is it destined to become just another oblast in Putin's expanding empire? While the missiles are physical, the primary battlefield for this escalation is the diplomatic arena, where a high-stakes game of shadow negotiation disrupted the fragile balance of power and sent Vladimir Putin into a rage. The catalyst for this renewed nuclear saber-rattling was the leak of a controversial peace plan drafted by the United States in late November, a document that appeared to offer Russia significant territorial concessions and security guarantees while limiting Ukraine's military future. For a brief moment, the Kremlin believed victory was at hand, assuming that Western fatigue would deliver them a diplomatic win that their armies had failed to secure on the battlefield. However, this optimism was shattered when European leaders, refusing to be sidelined or to accept a capitulation on their continent, swiftly intervened to redraft the proposal into something far less favorable to Moscow. Putin's subsequent fury was palpable. He views the European Union not as a legitimate geopolitical player, but as a medley of vassal states that should know their place. The deployment of the Hypersonic system is his direct, violent answer to this diplomatic insubordination, a message sent in steel and rocket fuel that if Europe insists on blocking his terms for peace, they will face a direct existential threat. The timing of the deployment confirms that this is less about military necessity and more about political coercion. But if Putin believes that threatening annihilation will force Europe to the negotiating table on his terms, one must ask, has he severely miscalculated the resolve of a continent that is rapidly shedding its post-Cold War pacifism? The strategic logic behind placing these missiles in Belarus is centered on a specific psychological objective: to drive a wedge between the United States and its European allies by proving that Washington cannot protect Paris, Berlin, or Warsaw from a hypersonic first strike. By reducing the flight time to European capitals to mere minutes, Russia hopes to create a sense of inevitable doom that will paralyze decision-making in the EU and fracture the NATO alliance. The Hypersonic's range, estimated to be between 1,500 and 1,800 miles, covers virtually every significant target in Europe, turning the entire continent into a hostage of the Kremlin's whims. Instead of the panic and disarray that the Kremlin anticipated, the threat of the Hypersonic missiles has catalyzed a historic and unprecedented transformation across Europe, awakening a military giant that had been sleeping for decades. The data emerging from the European Union is staggering. Defense spending has skyrocketed to over 343 billion euros, surpassing the military budgets of both Russia and China combined, marking a definitive end to the era of complacency. This is no longer just about sending surplus ammunition to Ukraine. It is a fundamental shift toward a wartime mindset where nations are rearming, coordinating intelligence, and preparing for a direct conflict with Russia. Leaders from the UK, France, and Germany are now coordinating counter-proposals and security guarantees that effectively lock Russia out of dictating the future of European security architecture. The irony is palpable. By trying to bully Europe into silence with his missiles in Belarus, Putin has inadvertently created the very thing he feared most: a heavily armed, economically superior, and politically unified Europe that is ready to fight. As factories across the continent retool for war and defense pacts are strengthened, the message to Moscow is clear: intimidation has a shelf life, and Europe's patience has expired. But with both sides now locked in an escalating spiral of rearmament and rhetoric, how close are we to the spark that turns this Cold War hot? Ultimately, the Hypersonic deployment exposes the desperation of a regime that has run out of creative options and is forced to rely on the blunt instrument of nuclear blackmail to achieve its political goals. The missile system, for all its terrifying specs and hypersonic speed, is a symbol of Russia's strategic failure to win the war on the ground or the narrative in the international community. Even if the infrastructure in Belarus is completed and the missiles are armed, they serve as a static target that invites preemptive planning rather than submission. The United Kingdom, in particular, has signaled its refusal to be cowed, with reports surfacing of a quiet transfer of advanced weaponry to Ukraine that promises to be a nightmare for Russian logistics, further undermining the Kremlin's position. Putin's gamble relies entirely on the assumption that the West is weak and afraid, but the reality on the ground and in the defense ministries of Europe suggests that the fear has been replaced by anger and determination. The sinister plan exposed by Ukrainian intelligence has certainly raised the stakes, but it has not folded the hand of the West. Instead, it has convinced them to go all in. As the script of this war continues to be written in blood and iron, the final question is no longer about what Russia will do next, but rather, with the element of surprise lost and his threats ignored, does Vladimir Putin have any moves left before his house of cards collapses?